in your notebooks, I want you to write fractions to decimals. Now, you already have in your notebooks somewhere a place value chart. Okay, so you don't need to rewrite a place value chart. If you don't, you can go ahead and write it, but we start counting, or we start identifying place values from the decimal. The first place value to the left of the decimal is the ones.
Wait, where's your tens? I don't have this. Should I put it on the page I write fractions and then?
Yep.
Should we write this?
If you don't have it in your notebook,
Hundreds, thousands.
then you have the hundreds.
Thousands.
Hold on, I can only write so fast. Hundreds,
Thousands.
thousands,
10,000s. 100,000.
and then 100,000. Okay. When we go to the right of the decimal, the first place value to the right is the tenth. Next place value is the and then the third place value is the thousands. Now the way to tell the difference between to the right of the decimal and to the left of the decimal, to the right of the decimal, it ends with THS. Anytime you see THS with place values, you know that you're talking to the right of the decimal. Now, to understand decimals for a little bit. Base 10 blocks can be sometimes deceiving because depending on what you want to count as the ones place, it can change which of the little blocks represents what place value. Okay, so typically on a base 10 blocks, you have the large cube. Okay, now in that large cube, there are 1,000 little squares. Then, the next place value box, or block, it's just a square. And that has 100 little squares on it. And then you have what I call the rods. Okay? And those little rods have 10 squares on them. And then you have the tiny little cube, which is 1 square. Okay? Or 1 cube, I mean. 1 square, 1 cube, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So, it gets kind of tricky because sometimes this could count as the ones place. Okay? You don't need to necessarily write this down. If you do, it's fine. If this represents the ones, the next place value smaller would then be the tens. Then the next one smaller would be the hundredth. And then this little one would be the thousand. Okay? The reason being, there are 10 of these in one of these. There are 100 of these in one of these. And there are 1,000 of these. Oops, it's VTHS, sorry about that. There's 1,000 of these in one of them. Now, if this represents the ones place, what does this represent? It represents the tens. Because there would be 10 of these in one of them. If this represents the ones place, what does this represent? 10. Because there would be 10 of these in one of them. And then this would represent the hundredth. Because there would be 100 of these in one of them. If this represents the ones place, this would then represent the tens. Because there is 10 of these in one of them. If this is the ones, this is the tens, this would be the hundreds. Because there would be 100 of these in one of them. If this is the ones place, this would be what place value? The 10th. Because there would be 10 of these in one of them. If this represents the ones place, then this would represent the tens, because there would be 10 of these in one of them. If this is the ones place, this would be the hundreds. Because there would be 100 of these in one of them. And if this is the ones place, this would represent the thousands. Because there would be 1,000 of these in one of them. Okay? So base 10 blocks, they sometimes can be confusing because it all depends on which one you represent as the ones place. Now, if by chance you had this, and once again, you don't necessarily need to write this, okay? Now, if we said that this represents the ones place, how many ones do we have? We have 1. Since that's the ones place, we know that there would be a decimal then. That means that this represents the tens. How many tens do we have? Or sorry, 10. How many tenths do we have? We would have 2. How many hundredths do we have? 3. And then how many thousandths do we have? There would be 3 of them. So if this represents the ones place, our number would be, based on this picture, 1 in 233,000. Does that make sense? Is that clear? If this represents the ones place, that means that this represents the 10. How many tens do we have? 1. How many ones do we have? 2. How many tenths do we have? And then how many hundredths do we have?
3.
Okay? If this would represent the ones place, these would represent the tens, and this would represent the, so how many hundredths would I have?
1.
How many tenths would I have?
2.
How many ones would I have?
3.
And then I would need to put the decimal, and then how many tenths do I have?
3.
Okay? So you see how you have to look at what these different things represent. Okay? In order to be able to tell what decimal they're going to represent. So the first thing on your assignment that you're going to have tonight is they're going to give you some base 10 blocks. Okay? And based on the choices, because it's going to be multiple choice questions, you're going to need to be able to decide, based off of your choices, what place values represents the ones place. And it'll be pretty obvious. Okay? But does this make sense how base 10 blocks work?
Yes.
Okay? Alright. Now, a second thing that you're going to have for your homework tonight, and we've already talked about it as well, is writing numbers in expanded form.
Oh no.
Okay, so if we have 36 and 2400, we start with the value of the largest digit. What is the largest place value that has a digit in? It would be the 3. The 3 is in what place value? 10. So the value of the 3 would be 30. So if we do it in expanded form, you can do it like 30, or you may see it like this, 3 times its place value. Right? And then the next place value would be the next digit would be the 6. The 6 is in what place?
1.
And so the value of the 6 would be 6. So it would be plus 6, or then we put it in parentheses and put plus 6 times its place value, 6 times 1. Right? And now the next digit is going to be the 2. What place value is the 2 in? So the value of the 2 is?
22. Negative
210,
Oh.
right? And then we could write it as 2 times the decimal 1/10, or you may see it 2 times the fraction 1/10. Either way. And then we have the 4. The 4 is in what place value? So the value of the 4 is 400. And we want to make sure, since it's in the hundredth place, it's 2 places away from the decimal, so when we write it in expanded form, we want to make sure that the 4 is 2 places from the decimal. And then if we did it like this, it'd be 4 times its place value 100, or 4 times the fraction 100. Okay? You already had this down in your notes. This is just a review. Okay? Should be somewhere. Okay? So now, on your board, I want you to write this in expanded form. Keep your notes out because we're not done with the notes. We didn't really take any notes yet. I want you to write this number in expanded form. Go ahead and do that. What digit do we start with?
3.
The 3. What place value is the 3 in?
10.
So the value of the 3 is 30. What's the next digit we have?
9.
We could put plus 0. I'll put that in as a dot because we don't necessarily need that. Sometimes you will see it, sometimes you won't. Okay? Now, this 3 could also be 3 times 10. This could be, once again, this is optional, 0 times 1. Okay, it's optional. The next digit would be the 9. What place value is the 9 in? 10. So the value would be 9 tenths. Down here would be 9 times 1 tenth, or as a fraction, 9 times 1 over 10. The next digit we have is the 0. And so once again, this is optional. You don't need to have it. Sometimes you will see it, sometimes you won't. That 0 is in the 100th place, so you might see that, you might not. Okay? And then the next digit is the 6. And the 6 is in the 1,000. 10, 100, 1,000. And so the value of the 6 would be 6,000. Keep in mind, the 6 is 3 places to the right of the decimal, so when we write it in expanded form, we want to make sure that the 6 is 3 places to the right of the decimal. And now you might see it like this, 6 times the decimal 1,000, or 6 times a fraction 1 over 1,000. Okay? So, questions about that? How to do it in expanded form. This is a review from before. It should be in your notebook. Now, another thing that we talked about, which is review, is reading decimals. When we read decimals, we break them into 4 parts. What's the first part we read? Very good. The whole number, the number in front of the decimal. And that would be 36. The second part is Camden? Shelton?
2400.
Nick? The decimal. What do we say in place of the decimal? And. The third part. The number after the decimal. What is the number after the decimal? 24. And then the third part that we read, when we're reading a decimal would be what? The place value of the last digit. That 4 is in the hundredths, so it would be 24 hundredths. Okay? If we read this one, the first part we're going to read is, which is 30. The second part, and. The third part,
The number after the decimal.
which is
906.
906. And now the last part. Trent?
Place value?
The place value of the last digit. That 6 is in the thousand. So it'd be 30 and 906 thousandths. Okay? On your board. Yes.
Is it just like word form? Like word form?
Basically, yeah. The way you read it is how you write it. Now, let's do this one. Write that one in word form. Maybe you're not doing what I'm telling you. I didn't tell you to write it in expanded form, I told you to write it in word form. Two things are wrong with yours, Camden. Actually, one thing's wrong with it. One thing's wrong with yours, Chad. No. Missing something. Not quite, again. Nate, what's the first thing we do?
You just write, box it.
Yeah, what am I gonna put a box around?
16.
What number?
16.
Is that what you wrote down?
No.
No. Okay, you're gonna read the whole number first, which is 16. Correct? The second part, and the decimal. The third part, Gabby,
24.
24, the number to the right of the decimal. The fourth part, Dad,
Thousands.
the place value, that last digit, it is in the thousands. Some people put hundredths. It is the thousands. Keep in mind, tenth, hundredth, thousandth. Camden, the reason I said you had two parts wrong, you had hundred. Hundred, there's no THS, so that means you're to the left of the decimal. You gotta make sure that since you're to the right of the decimal that you put the THS. Okay? Keegan, you had the wrong place value. Okay? Make sure that we have it, that we identify the place value of the last digit. Okay? Questions about that? Now, if I give you this number, $28 thousandths. When we read that number, what do we know? Kelton,
There's a decimal.
how do you know there's a decimal?
This says thousandths.
It says thousands, so we know that there's a decimal. Now, is there a word and?
No.
No. So what also do we know?
That it's after the whole number.
That is after the whole, that there are no whole numbers, right? And so the first thing you can write is a decimal. Now, if you put a 0 in front, that is fine. But now, we're going to write 28. The only problem is, it says 28 thousandths. Since it says 28 thousandths, that means that this 8 must be in what place value? In the thousands. Right now it is in the hundreds. Do I put a 0 there?
No.
No, because that number is what?
10,000.
Well, no. How do you read that number right now?
280.
280. It doesn't say 280. It says 28. So we can't put the 0 behind it. It has to go in front of the 2. Now we still have our 28, and the 8 is in our thousandth place. Okay? Do this one. $609 and 34 thousandths. Checkers, Cam. Checkers one. Checkers one. Checkers, Keegan. Checkers, Nate. Good. 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 Fabian, when I read this number, I'm going to read to what?
You can read to the 600.
Break it into 4 parts. I'm going to read to the end. So what's the first thing I'm going to read?
609.
Stop there. What number do you have? You have 6,009. 609. There's 609. Second part. So here we have our first part. Here we have our second part. And now we have our third part. 34. And now we have our last part. Thousandths. Is it 4 in the thousandth place? No, it's in the hundreds. We can't put it behind it because it would be 340. So we have to put the 0 in front of it between the 3 and the decimal. So we still have our 34, but now that 4 is in the thousandth place. Okay? Questions about this? Okay, so we're doing a lot of reviewing here. Okay, we talked about writing a decimal as expanded form. 2 different ways of expanded form. We talked about how to write a decimal in word form and how to take a decimal from word form and put it into decimal form or standard form. Now you're saying, well, it says for our notes, fractions to decimals. So, now let's get to that point. That's okay. Now, there's 2 different parts that we're going to be dealing with when changing fractions to decimals. The part we're going to deal with today, well, neither part's difficult, but they're a little bit different. I just want to check something real quick. In a fraction, and you can write this down. A fraction is made up of 3 parts. Not every fraction has 3 parts. Some fractions only have 2 parts. Okay? If it has 3 parts, we call it a mixed number. The number in front here, that is the whole number. The top number is called the numerator. And the bottom number is the denominator. If there is a whole number, that whole number goes to the left of the decimal. So, when we're writing fractions to a decimal, rules. Whole numbers go to the left of the decimal. Now, here we have where the difference is between the 2 different ways that we can write a fraction as a decimal. If the denominator is 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, millions. Okay, if the denominator is one of those, you're simply going to write the numerator to the right of the decimal. So if the denominator is 10, 100, 1,000, or 10,000, you're simply going to write the numerator to the right of the decimal. Making sure the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. I'm going to abbreviate place value with PV. Making sure the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. 73 degrees, but it's always cold right in front of you guys because you guys are getting the air blowing on you, and meanwhile over here, they get the warm air that's getting blown around the room. So, you guys are the cool people. You guys are the warm people.
That means you're not cool people.
Okay, so example. If we have 4 and 6/10. The first rule is if there's a whole number, it goes to the left of the decimal. We have a whole number. So we put it to the left of the decimal. The second thing, if the denominator is 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and so on, so our denominator is a 10. It is one of those. Since it is one of those, write the numerator to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to write the numerator to the right of the decimal. But I have to make sure that the last digit is in the place value of the denominator, meaning our denominator is, so that means that this 6 must be in the 10th place. Is the 6 in the 10th place? Yes. If we do another example. Nine and 600th. Okay, once again, whole number goes to the left of the decimal. If the denominator is 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, which it is, we're going to write the numerator to the right of the decimal. But making sure that the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. Denominator is? 100. So that means that this has to be in the 100th place. Is it in the 100th place? No. No. So we have to put a 0 between the 6 and the decimal to make sure that the last digit is in the 100th place. Another example. Okay, the whole number is 4. That goes to the left of the decimal. The denominator is 1,000. That's one of our numbers. So we write the numerator to the right of the decimal. Now we must make sure that the last digit is in the denominator, place of the denominator. So our last digit must be in the 1,000. Is our 2 in the 1,000th place? No. No. So we need to add a 0. Where does the 0 go? Right, Fabian?
In front of the decimal.
Between
the decimal.
and between the decimal and the 1. So now we have 10, 100, 1,000. The 2 is in the 1,000th place. Okay? Questions about that? Okay, let's get out your boards. Okay, write that as a decimal. Okay, first of all, is there a whole number?
No.
No, there is no whole number. So we don't need to put a whole number. If you want to, you can put that 0 there. Don't need to. The denominator, is it one of our numbers? Yes. So we're going to write the numerator to the right of the decimal. Making sure that the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. The denominator is 10. So that means that 6 must be in the 10th place. Is it in the 10th place? Yes. And so you would have 0.6. You have it in the 100th place. Do this one. Is there a whole number? No. That 0 is optional. Now, the 100 is one of our numbers, so we know that we can write the numerator to the right of the decimal. Making sure that the last digit is in the denominator, the place of the denominator. Is it right in the 100th place?
No.
No. So we need to put a 0 so that last digit is in the 100th place. Do this one. I think you have it, Keegan. Where'd you get the 12 from?
Oh, I wrote that, yes, I wrote that down thing.
Okay, so Fabian, do we have a whole number? Do we have a whole number? Yes, the whole number is 6. Is the denominator either 10, 100, 1,000, or 100, 10,000, or 100,000?
Yes.
Is it? Yes or no? So what do we do with the numerator? If it is one of these, write the numerator to the right of the decimal. Okay? So we're going to write the 4 to the right of the decimal. Making sure that the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. What's our denominator? Denominator is the bottom number. So that means that this 4 must be in the 100th place. Is it in the 100th place? What do we need to do?
You put a 0 in between the,
4 in the decimal.
yes.
Okay? Erase it. Let's do one more. Actually, we're going to do about 2 more, 3 more.
Yeah.
Okay, quickly, so that you guys have time for your homework. This one. Don't erase it. I just couldn't see it. Not quite that. Not quite, Camden. Not quite. I think you're okay. You have some dots on your board that makes it look kind of confusing. Whole number is 8. The denominator is 100. That's one that we're looking for. So that means we're going to put the 12, the numerator, to the right of the decimal. Make sure the last digit is in the place value of the denominator. The denominator is 100. So that means that 2 must be in the 100th place, correct?
Yes.
Is it in the hundredth place?
Yes.
Yes. You have it in the thousandth place. 10, 100. Get rid of that 0. Okay? There were a couple that had it wrong. You had this guy. That would be 12,000. We don't have 12,000. We have 1,200. Because we want to keep it like that. This one. Not quite, David. Good. Good. Not quite, Gabby. Good. 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 Better. Good. Whole number is what, class?
14.
14. Since the denominator is 1,000, that's what we're looking for. The numerator goes to the right of the decimal. Denominator is 1,000, so that means that 6 must be in the 1,000th place. Right now, it's in the 100th place. So we need to put a 0. So we have 14 and 6, or so 14 and 26,000. Any questions? Okay, your homework. Okay, so your homework is going to be workbook 60, 2 to 20 the even. Okay, go ahead and begin.